Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Incubator Podcast. This is your co-host, Satbir and Darren.
And this is Darren Boyd. And today we are bringing back friends of the show, Cribl. So we're excited to have them back. We did an original podcast with Cribl. I think it was number 15, about 6 months ago. No surprise. They've been on a tear in terms of what they're delivering to the market. So we're excited to have Cribl back. And just before I introduce our guest, I want to try and give a definition of Cribl. And this one's been evolving for me. There's almost a factual definition, which is, hey, Cribl is a platform that allows you to, it's a compliant facility to melt data from any source to any destination. Fine, that works. But what I've seen now that we've been deploying it over and over at customers is it's so much more than that. Now, I turn my definition to, hey, it's something that allows for rapid experimentation. It's something that allows for you to maintain your standards with confidence. It's something that allows you to be vendor agnostic in a world where analytic tools are incredibly expensive because they're dealing with data. That fits as well, but I don't even think that's doing it justice. So now I almost want to say Cribl is doing something very pivotal at the nexus of observability or operational data and security data. They're bringing together silos that have historically been very separated in a very expensive medium historically, which is data movement, data analytics. So it means a lot to a lot of people. Our guest is Ed Bailey. Ed used to be a customer, turned senior staff technical engineer at Cribl.
Evangelist.
Evangelist. What did I say?
Not just an engineer.
Evangelist. I apologize. So we're excited to have Ed on the show. He is someone that has had his hands in Cribl early days, and now he's, of course, representing Cribl as a voice. So, Ed, if you could, welcome to the show, number one, and if you could give us an intro and a little bit of your history, because I think it's so pertinent to what we're talking about.
Thanks for the invitation. Just love to be here. I always want to talk about Cribl. I always want to talk about observability and security data. Just give you a little bit about my past history. So I owned security and operational logging change unit for a very long time. In 2015, 2016, things are going crazy. The amount of data, the complexity, not enough staffing, too many people, global deployment. I'm pulling my hair out. I have a lot of gray hair, and I don't have a lot left. And it was just impossible. We were looking for solutions to how do we manage this data? How do we consume anything and get it to where we need it to go, and also manage our costs? And 2018 or so, I see a Facebook ad. It's from Clint Sharp. It's talking about something called Cribl. And I'm like, what is that? I don't know what that is, but I knew who Clint was from working with him when he was at Splunk. And I think that ad only ran for a week. And I just said, hey, you know what? Let's take a 15-minute meeting. And we took a 15-minute meeting, and Dratan, one of the other founders, showed me something, and I was like, wow, you guys have just about invented fire. And of course, for someone who is, if you're in that business with Elastic and Splunk, managing this kind of data at scale, all of a sudden you see the solution to your problems. And I was blown away. We did another demo. We knocked off about $500,000 off my license, and I was sold. And so then went to an extraordinary lengths to get the product into our environment. And just the transformative effect was just something. I mean, it was, and so much so that as we, I hit a little bit of pandemic madness, and I was like, you know what, let's go from architecture and engineering to marketing. So, and that was kind of crazy, but you know what, I did it, and I'm really happy about it. Love talking to our customers, talking to prospects. I learned so much from them, and I like being able to share how we can help solve their problems, because I know fundamentally how tough their job is, and we can make things even just a little bit easier. I think we've accomplished something.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. That's a very colored or colorful past and an exciting future of where you're at, Ed. If you don't mind, Ed, just starting to talk about where you are currently, what are the challenges you're seeing customers come up with today? Where's the head or industry going at, right? Where's your head? Where's the client's head? Where's industry going at or towards?
I'm lucky enough to have enough time in the industry to have perspective and see what's going on. I think number one is just into the individual challenges, managing your expenses, managing your run rate, and then also being able to deliver to your customers. Security teams want more than ever. Operation teams want more than ever. So how do you get this done? How do you do both at the same time? And as you mentioned, traditionally, when you're working in this space, managing your run rate and managing your costs has not really been a focus. There's just really been not a lot of opportunities there. From a company perspective, strategic independence is hugely important. Companies are getting very tired of feeling like they're locked into vendors. I think also staffing is an enormous issue. Everyone's struggling with staffing, and at the C level, they're all asking, how can I shift my engineering time from BAU, keeping the lights on, toward innovation? And so those are the things that we see just constantly over and over again. Companies want change. They want better results. They want to manage the cost. They want to get better results out of their engineering time. And so, that's how we work every day.
Yeah, I actually want to go back to, like, one, you're a refreshing voice in this, because I always love talking to folks that have lived the pain. And I agree that it's a really hard job. I've been out of IT for a little while now, but I still have those scars. So you're a refreshing voice in this, but I want to go all the way back to those conversations with Clint, because one, he's an interesting personality. I love how he applies first principles. I love how engaged he is. I love that he's contrarian in his views. But he has tackled something that has been historically very difficult to cull. And almost like, I'm looking at your background, from the logo, the artwork, it's simple, it's aesthetic, it's elegant, and it's very easy to deploy Cribl. So can you walk us through how transformative even that is, your approach? Because quite frankly, we have talked to customers that have tried to do this themselves. Literally, like, they're going to use Pulsar or Kafka or something else, and we're going to find a way to route our data. But when you look at how vast and applicable Cribl is, and how many sources it can pull from, and how easy it is to create pipelines and route that, and how easy it is to enrich, that is truly transformational unto itself. Can you walk us through a little bit of your experience with that when you first installed it, and how much of a breath of fresh air that likely was?
And that was part of the reason why I said it's like invented fire, because previously we had been through it's not that you can't build these tools, but the amount of time it takes you to build these tools, the amount of time it takes you to support these tools is way beyond the engineering effort to justify it. And I get the installable, the pre 1.0 Cribl installable, and I download it, and I'm managing data in 15 minutes. I'm not going to the command line. I'm not having to figure out my own regexes. I'm able to see, with my code, okay, here's my raw data, and here's what the data looks like after I transform it. It's right there. I don't have to build this entire dev stack. So many bits and pieces of pain that you would have to do with other tools were just gone. And that ease of use, and then that gets to where, to me, the true value of Cribl is, you're limiting the displacement costs. Too many times when you go into an environment, so say like you have a Splunk environment, there's no sticking something in the middle. There's no third party. You don't have a lot of choices. And then also, going back to where you're talking about Cribl, the values for me is something I've always seen as choice and control. I'm in control of my data. I make the choices of what I do with my data. And that fast time to value, low displacement cost. I could use all of my agents I already had. I didn't have to deploy any new agents. I didn't have to stop using Splunk. And at the same time, I was able to get more value from Splunk at the same time. And so all those things I was especially that focus on fast value, low displacement cost was massive. I mean, we were able to start carving out massive chunks of our license, saving money. Right away. It's just my boss could not believe how fast we were delivering value. I show him the numbers, and he's just stunned.
No doubt.
That doesn't happen all the time. I was talking to an executive the other day, and he's like, "So you're going to help me have better data, control my cost, and lower my run rate, and also scale my staffing time all at the same time?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, you don't see that every day."
No, you don't. I think. And that's an important one unto itself. Like, there's a handful of technologies I deployed in my career that I went, wow, that's really changed things for me. And this is one of those techs.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's why the other tools we're starting to deploy, especially around Cribl Search, which I hope we can talk about later, is that idea that doing something no one else is doing, adding on to an existing capability without taking away from the existing capabilities, and fast time to value. It's just so important. And just as you mentioned with teams, I talk to teams every day, and they are struggling. The amount of size, the tired, the weariness, the struggle is real. And so just being able to help these teams solve these problems, it's personally, it's important to me.
Yeah. So on our journey to search here, Ed, and maybe if we can start double clicking on it, that the data movement, the data pipeline, observability, kind of routing capabilities being par for the course, right? So for some of the enterprise clients that have realized, were early adopters or current adopters, have realized those benefits of being on the Cribl platform. Now they're looking for more of that sophisticated use case, particularly getting into from a security lens, and are looking to figure out how, and then you introduce either hybrid working environments, but particularly cloud working environments, and the concepts of, hey, I'm going to establish a security data lake. So what are the implications as we build up towards leveraging Cribl Search that you're finding from your customer base?
One of the biggest things is, and just as you're mentioning, decoupling your data lake, decoupling your analytics, decoupling your retention from your SIEM platform. These days, typically that SIEM platform is going to be cloud-based. It's going to be extraordinarily expensive. And it doesn't make a lot of sense anymore to try to do the type of deep analytic searches that your IR, your threat hunt team need to do in your data, also in your SIEM. It accelerates your cost in every way possible. Storage cost, CPU cost. And that's one of the most powerful things that I'm seeing teams do is, okay, that's great. We're going to send the data we need for detection into our SIEM platform, and then we're going to split the data. And then what I recommend is put all of your data into your own cloud object storage, build your own data lake, have it under your own control. Because everyone I think it's really started to sink in that when I put data into my cloud vendor's storage, my SaaS vendor storage, it's now their data. It's not my data. They're not going to let me get that data out. They're not going to let me reuse that for other purposes. So in just real good, just small ROI, we work with one particular vendor where we're able to replace their archive storage that they offer with customers' own AWS storage and see about a 10x ROI, immediate ROI in storage.
Wow.
So now the company has their own storage, they have their own data, and then they can have full control. Use Cribl Search to search it, do whatever you want with it. But also with Cribl Stream, pull data out of that data lake and put it somewhere else. See it repeatedly with customers where they'll take a snapshot of that data and put it into Snowflake, put it into Databricks for analysis, send it off for a cyber fraud use case, send it off to some sort of third-party IR company for analysis. And they get so much flexibility, so many cost savings that it just benefits everybody. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's music to our ears, because we're finding our client base and existing customers heading down that direction, and they're asking us all these questions. And of course, we want to talk about Cribl being that God-sent platform, and is really fundamentally is beginning to take the shape of, or becoming the linchpin in that future architecture.
That choice and control over your data, I think, is so key, and it just empowers all the different security functions. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No. All I was going to say is I was going to reinforce some of those points, because not only do you give that freedom of choice, which is exceptionally powerful, but it's now I can make discerning choices. So for example, you said it, Ed, I can put something in a lower cost medium that data unto itself may or may not be valuable. However, I don't need to keep everything in my expensive analytics platform. I can be more discerning with what data I move if I need to, but I can use things like search to search in place. So if I'm hunting, if I'm looking at IOC, I can do it right at the data lake, which is I think is transformational. Satbir and I, we saw an IDC report. I think it was published mid 2021, but it said 99% of their customers that they spoke to, this is IDC, said of the 99%, 6% sorry, 99% of the customers said 6% of their cloud spend is in data movement. And that's an astronomical number. And if we're looking at, we're seeing a lot of folks that'll have their data lake in AWS, they'll have their SIM in Azure, let's say, and they're moving data constantly, and that can be very expensive. So this is an interesting medium. But beyond the fact that you've introduced this new capability, I also want to point out how you did it. You are fully embracing open standards. So we've seen new partnerships. We've seen support of Ceph. We've seen support of OCSF. You've built search on an enhanced version of Kusto, which is open source. You can now take Sigma rules, which are open source, and convert them. So now you've got not only the ability to search, but I have my threat rules and search algorithms that I can easily port over, making this a very effective tool. And if I only need to then move to a specific analytics package, I can choose to do so. I think that is going to completely transform people's costs and their experience in this domain.
I completely agree. And Clint says first principles over and over again, and I completely agree. Think about the ideas of picking up a product. So like Cribl Stream uses JavaScript. JavaScript's a common language. People are familiar with it. You're not having to learn some made up language that someone came up with. You're not having to do training. You're already starting out with a familiarity. Another thing what I like about Kusto, you already have a familiarity to it. It already makes sense. It's well documented. It's open source. And so all these ideas just facilitate the ability of low displacement costs, rapid adoption, and fast value.
Yeah, so very important. Now, can you walk us through? So that scenario we just painted is incredibly, it's invaluable. However, I think you have a longer term vision, including searching in data sources, including searching at the edge in a more meaningful way. Where do you take this idea of federated search? How far is Clint going to go with his possibilistic thinking?
Well, the roadmap, the way I'm thinking about it is we're starting with AWS Object Store, then it's going to be Azure, then it's going to be GCP, because I think let's just go back from it, going back to first principles, serving the customer's needs and not limiting the customer. You look at other potential competitors. The entire business model is set up on keeping their data in my data lake, in my pool, so to say. We're going to free up customers to do what they want to do, what they need to do. So Azure, GCP, and then next, the ability to do a federated search over Elastic and Splunk, the ability to look into something like log analytics in Azure. The idea is to keep giving customers options. And then finally, the thing that I'm most excited about, and this is something that's truly new, we have a log collection agent called Edge. And one of the Edge's best features is Cribl Search can send a distributed search to Edge so you can actually search the server that Edge is installed on. That is another just blow your mind type of moment. Anyone who's been in my shoes of trying to run a really big Splunk and Elastic deployment, the developers want debug logs. But of course, debug logs are mostly useless, but when they need them, they need them. If the idea of being able to send a command, being able to search your debug logs, do it easily, do it transparently, do it cheaply, it's just, that's awesome. And it just gives you so many more choices and ways to more capabilities, less costs. Yeah. Does that make sense?
100%. So maybe we could just go even one step further, Ed. So tremendous value in terms of data movement, control over your data, routing over your data. Now, for those customers, traditionally, without naming, competitors or other vendors or anything like that, but there's various multitude of platforms out there. With Cribl Search, how do you see that really becoming the focus of a CISO's strategy from a security use case perspective?
Very, very much so. And so there's a couple of areas. And then this is where I've said it before and I'll say it again, the ability to bring in a capability and not have to stop what you're already doing. Imagine going into talking to a company and says, our tool is better than what you're using now, but you have to stop using that tool in order to use our tool. The thing about Cribl Search is it is an additive capability that you can layer on top of what you're already doing. So you can run your best-in-class enterprise SIEM for your detection capability capabilities. But where Cribl Search comes in is powering that data lake. We have a lot of customers who are already doing this, building massive data lakes, building really impressive analytics that they then feed back into their detection pipeline. So they're able to get better results from that data. And this is something just from an operational that anyone who's been in my shoes has run into. Your threat hunters, your IR team running their big searches, if you're doing it in your SIM, you're actually impacting your SIM. You're knocking your detections off. You're knocking your searches off. Decouple that, you minimize your risk and get better results. It's just it's hugely powerful, and you help you manage your cost. I mean, one of the big things we're working with one prospect where they need to cap their cost, and we're going to give them the ability to keep running their SIM like they're running it, but not have to spend any more new money. And so that was just, it was powerful to the engineering, the architecture, and the system. I was like, you mean I can manage my budget? And like, yes, absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah, there's a few things to that too. Even the idea of cost containment. Look at Search's architecture. It's Lambda based. It's serverless. Not that the customer has to care, but the point is we can ramp and damp some of that infrastructure appropriately as you search. So even that concept is a cost effective way of doing things.
Yeah, I love the license model being consumption based. You're only paying for what you use, and it makes it much easier to forecast, easier to manage, and I think it's just very customer friendly.
Yeah, agreed.
Question on that, actually, Ed, if you wouldn't mind. So I know that's a shift from the traditional on-prem licensing models, and I don't necessarily expect you to go into how the details of licensing, but on that consumption-driven model, how could you expand a little bit on that in terms of how it operates, how it functions for Cribl Search?
Yes, and so the idea of CPU hours. So when you run a search and you're able to hit essentially a counter, and then aggregate the CPU hour, and then you burn down a token. And so it gives you a way to, I think, just pay for what you use, and also make it really reasonable and also transparent. I'm investing a lot of time in making sure customers have dashboards and ways they can forecast this cost, because this goes back to Clint's first principle of being customer first. For customers, like I was there myself, you get very, very, very frustrated when you can't forecast your cost. And some of the license models, that's what they're for. They don't want you to forecast your cost. So we want to make it as transparent as possible for customers to understand what they're doing, understand the utilization, and so they know exactly what's going on. But does that model make sense in terms of just consumption based and just trying to keep it simple?
Yeah, no, that helps, and certainly there's never any ingress charges by your CSPs out there. Naturally would be egress. Cribl doesn't get involved in that process per se. It's just wherever the customer is directing or moving their own traffic.
Well, there is potentially some, because especially in a customer in another region, you're running a search, you're pulling data out of their S3 bucket, you're running a search, and there is some egress cost involved, and that's something that's being worked on. How do we minimize it? How do we manage that? But right now, there is some egress cost involved, and we try to be real upfront about that.
Oh, that's thank you for the clarification.
So we've talked a lot about this autonomy and the fact that you don't have to rip anything out, which is so incredibly important. We've also addressed the idea that if you build this yourself, it's going to be exceptionally complex, and then you have to manage it at scale. I would suggest that Cribl is the only company I've seen that can do this at the type of volumes that the largest enterprises operate at. But the other important thing that we're seeing, at least with Cribl, and this is just talking stream, is not only do I not have to rip anything out, I can complement, or I can bring my own tooling. So up until now, it's you picked your vendor of choice and you use whatever ecosystem they support, and that's it. Now we're getting product teams, which we're seeing have more and more autonomy out there. When it comes to new product introduction, they have full P&L, and this is a product mode operation. We now see that they can bring their own tools, whether it's Beats, whatever agent they want, and they can easily send this to Cribl. Once it gets to Cribl, we can do some exceptionally important things. Not only because this all started, I think, at least our involvement with Cribl started with, let's reduce the amount of data so we can curtail costs of licensing. But it's snowballed into something so much bigger, as we've just been discussing. But that freedom of choice, I think, is one of the quickest on-ramps for people to explore Cribl. But true to this idea that you are at the bleating edge, and that's a shout out to your goat. We've got AppScope, which we haven't talked about. I haven't used it much, but I love the idea of the universal agent. I love the interposing functions. That's incredible unto itself. Then we have Edge. We've added Search. We're integrating all these pieces. It's all like integrating with Stream. Where does all this go from here, Ed? Because this is a fascinating ride to watch from the sidelines, and it's fascinating for our customers to say. It's almost like I get to say, I told you this was a good choice. Every time you add something, I pretend that I had some omnipotent, whatever, prescience. I'll say, I told you made a good choice. Where does this all go next, Ed?
Well, I think the idea for companies is you can mix and match capabilities to build up their own stacks. And I think where this goes is this is something I was arguing with my boss about on our live stream yesterday, was I increasingly see companies going to a best of breed strategy where they're no longer going to be at the mercy of, okay, here's my ecosystem and our SIM is great, but our other tools aren't great. So you're just going to have to deal with it. Where companies can now say, I want to use your SIM because it's awesome, but I'm going to use a UBA tool from another company because it's awesome. And then I'm going to use a SOAR from a third company because it's awesome. And that ability to mix and match and handle your best of breed. I think that best of breed approach is going to speed up because now the integration gets a lot simpler. Just to give you a quick story, and this is where that transformation effect of Cribl becomes so important for me. My CISO brings in Exabeam into our mix. So we're using Splunk Enterprise Security and he wants to use Exabeam. And so and we're struggling because, we deploy 50,000 agents. What do? We were able to onboard Exabeam in about 3 weeks. So what's normally a 6 to 9 month migrations in 3 weeks? I'm happy because we're done fast. My CISO is happy because that, multiple, large chunk of change that he budgeted for a 6 to 9 month employment, he now gets value from the tool right away. And that was that really hit me as this is not just cost reduction, but this is transformation. Now, going back to your original question, this is where this matters. I see more best of breed. I see more competition in the security space. Companies aren't going to be able to corral their customers into their ecosystem anymore. Customers are going to be able to do what they want to do. And so I think that's going to get even bigger. And then that's going to give Cribl the opportunity to give even more integrations, more additive effects. You're going to especially see Cribl Search be able to cross those silos and give companies even more data. And I think long term, we get into the APM, we get into the observability, we get into the analytics, but I think that's more down the road. Right now, I think we're very focused on areas other companies aren't addressing, and that's data movement, data transformation, and bridging silos. Does that resonate?
It absolutely resonates. The rapid experimentation, I can't state clearly enough how powerful that is. Your example is a perfect example. You can we send once to Cribl. We can send it to multiple tool sets as a destination. You can now do comparative analysis between those, and then you can flip the switch. And how amazing is that? Because that's unheard of. To your point.
Yeah, exactly. We work with a CISO in the Midwest, and he was using a particular SIM that no one likes, but people don't want to get off of because they perceive the risk of moving away as just simply not worth the cost because they're afraid of weakening their security posture. We put Cribl Stream in place, so we were able to keep data going to his legacy SIM as before, but then fork that data to his new SIM. He was able to migrate his detections, migrate his dashboards, able to do an A/B comparison to make sure his new SIM was working as well as his old SIM. He even kept his old SIM running for 30 days after the cutover. He took all the risk out of the migration and sped it up at the same time. And and it was all about the risk of am I weakening my security posture to get a better tool? And by taking that question away, he was able, this is great. We got what we wanted and we took the risk away. And I think that's just, it's super powerful.
Yeah, I think de-risking, if nobody gets anything else out of this, just imagine what it's like to swap out a solution of this magnitude. And then imagine it with Cribl, because that's where we're doing an incredible amount of activity personally, is these massive migrations. And that could be within ecosystems. Like for example, we've got customers that go from Splunk to Splunk Cloud. And that can be across tool sets. But either way, that A/B testing, hey, is this still meeting the needs that we were getting before? Is just like it's transformational.
Yeah. It really is. The CISO I was talking to, he was laughing about it because he said previously it's, you do what you can in Vio con Dios and you hope for the best. There's no backing out. There's no failover. It's just you got to fix for it. And it's like at my level with the data that we're handling, that's unacceptable. We can't do that.
Yeah. No, Ed, this was a great conversation. We covered, I think, a lot of important concepts here about what Cribl brings to the table here. We love Cribl. We see it, again, as a true enabler or part of any company's fabric in terms of what you said, allowing them to simplify integration, enable different things, best-of-breed solutions. We're just always jazzed up about it. So thank you so much for your time today. We would love to continue the conversation, bring some more deeper use cases next time and get into that. Darren, anything else you...
No, just Ed, thank you very much for anybody following the podcast. Thank you as well. Do subscribe, and Ed will be putting out some joint material shortly. But we appreciate the support. We hope to have you back, and we'll be adding our own case studies as well.
Awesome. Thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate it. It's a great conversation. I hope we can do it again soon.
Sounds great.
Take care.
Take care.